Hello and welcome. I'm Carrie Klataski, and I'll be reading today from the book Becoming and Belonging Supporting the Healthy Social Emotional Development of the Young Child by the WECAN Early Childhood Research Group, edited by Holly Cotin Soleil. Today I'll be reading from Chapter 5 Remembering Play. Stephanie Holscher. Let all things be where thou art, childlike ever, by Goethe, from the Trilogy of Passion. Once upon a time, a teacher remembers two little boys, long-time competitors, both wanted to be king of the castle. They stood on a table where each declared himself king. The teacher, Joan Allman, walked past quietly, muttering to herself, "There was once a country that had two kings." The play at once opened up to new possibilities. The literature on play is vast and deep. Play, recognized as a hallmark of life, brings together psychologists, scientists, animal biologists, educators, mystics, urban planners, and poets. This vast web of interconnecting thought also comes together when we see that play provides the work and the will for the future. Linger on for a moment. Pretend that you, as teacher, are holding the space for a parent gathering. You bring a warming, imaginative invitation to the circle. Take yourself back into the flow of your childhood. Call up memories of play. Bring your whole self into this remembering, body and heart as much as mind, time, and space. Let images of other beings, human and not, along with feelings, sounds, touch, movement, and smells wash over you, childlike ever. Find a few words to capture what it felt like to be lost in the flow of play. Come back to the present. How do your childhood experiences of play still live in you? Are they present, alive, and enlivening in your work as a teacher? This opening imagination flows as a source of origin and destination for a meandering contemplation on play. I pick up threads of questions brought from our not-so-distant past, but they are not woven, weft, and warp into a tapestry of form. They instead move like water, opaque and clear, tributaries and confluences, estuaries and blockages, ultimately flowing out to a larger body that holds them all. Play is like a river. We are at a new threshold moment in the Earth's history. Calling up our collective remembering of play as a child brings us into the flow of imaginative possibilities for our children and our world. Children are hungry to play. It is my hope that this essay offers thoughts about amplifying what we already know and do regarding play in order to help restore play as a creative and health-giving wellspring for children and ourselves and the world. Much is at stake here. As far-reaching as this statement may seem, the future depends upon making sure that children can play because play brings forth imaginative and creative thinkers. That is why we, as Waldorf teachers, are and need to be righteously fierce, open-minded, and actively seeking ways to support children's play. A world of depleted imagination will lead to a bleak future. As researchers from the Common Worlds Research Collective note in the UNESCO report, Learning to Become with the World, Education for Future Survival. If our species does not survive the ecological crisis, it will probably be due to our failure to imagine and work out new ways to live with the earth. We will go onwards in a different mode of humanity, or not at all. Kindred roots, freeing the flow. Alone, there isn't much we can do, but if we stand together, there's an immense amount that we can do. It is our task to make ourselves more susceptible and capable of learning. This requires unconditional openness and positive anticipation. Imagine again, feel into the inner space of children in your care. Open your thinking heart. How does it feel to stand next to your teacher, silent without words, to play alone under a table, vigilant and guarding your toys, to roar into the play of others, drowning out their cries of protest, to be tethered to creations of the techno world. Imagine, how does it feel, dear children, to not know the sweet, freeing joy release of play? And you, dear teacher, how do you feel when I, as one of your many in your care, am me? Play is a liberating experience for the child. It brings them a feeling of well being and happiness. In healthy, self directed play, a child is attentive, absorbed, and able to persevere in something of their own choosing. They are curious, lively, and energetic. They are able to tolerate mild frustrations. Their breathing is rhythmic. Their speech is relaxed. Children move within a continuous flow of actions and care about friends. They show signs of satisfaction after play. In play, children explore and discover. They look for adventures and physical challenges, like in the rough and tumble play that mimics the animal world. They seek both motion and protection, enclosing, enfolding, and building places of shelter and refuge for self and others, human and animal. The baby, the family, the kitten or dog. Research demonstrates that developmentally appropriate play with parents and peers is a singular opportunity to promote the social, emotional, cognitive, language, and self regulation skills that build executive function and a pro social brain. Play has been a pillar of Waldorf early childhood education since its inception. Waldorf teachers are experts on play, as play is understood in a particular way based upon the writings of Rudolf Steiner. We tend to see play as those activities freely chosen and directed by the children that arise from their own intrinsic motivation. We call this self-directed play. Out of this understanding, we may certain expectations about play. These expectations may then guide our work. They also might hamper or restrain us. In our classrooms, we have tended to see a clear separation between self-directed play on the one side and the practical work of the teacher, in which children may join on the other. Joan Allman, a former Waldorf kindergarten teacher, a pioneering leader in our movement, and a co-founder of the Alliance for Childhood, was early to observe that changes in the social landscape of childhood were affecting play. As Joan saw it, this called for changes in our understanding of play and the practices needed to support it. I never met Joan, but she was my superhero. Over a decade ago, observing the increasing inability in young children to self-initiate and sustain play, even when the opportunity to do so was available, Joan identified the need for adults to learn to act as play facilitators. The 2009 publication, Crisis in the Kindergarten, suggests a mixture of a classroom rich in child-initiated play and a classroom of playful learning as a balanced ideal. If we believe in the importance of play carried by a child's own will and imagination, which I trust we will continue to do, then children need adults to bring appropriate support to create a suitable environment. As Joan Allman and Edward Miller write in Crisis in the Kindergarten, exploring the world through play with the active presence of teachers would stand side by side or even interpenetrate with teachers guiding learning with rich experiential activities. The report leaves open the question of how to do this. The Alliance for Childhood is an international coalition of teachers, medical professionals, university professors, child advocates, and parents. Through Allman's work in this organization, an anthroposophical view of play has flowed into a large, shared public conversation with others equally dedicated to protecting the right of children to play. In the following sections, I share stories of different approaches and solutions that feed children's hunger for play in order to provoke our own thinking and conversations. My own process of exploration and my discoveries about play have taken me far beyond the confines of a Waldorf or a Steiner body of knowledge, because I see play as part of our work for the greater social good. Joan's prescient voice rings clear to me in this regard. Rethinking constructs of space, materials, and beauty. What can we learn from others not like us who work in spaces and places not like ours? Public play spaces for children offer inspirations for reimagining play in ways that move away from categories of inside outside, urban rural, public private, self directed, and adult led. The following two stories offer concrete examples of adults fostering playful learning environments that meet the interests and needs of individual children without requiring direct adult interference. These environments dissolve the polarity between self-directed and adult-led play that has tended to be either or in our perception, thinking, and practice. It's also important to find a balance between the needs of the group, the class, and individual children. A major stream coming out of the pandemic and merging with what came before is the need, more pressing than ever, to build trust and relationships child by child, forging the container for a class, which then potentially becomes a vessel for community. Happens in the space most intimate and proximate, the child in front of me. This connection then flows out in radiant beams to form the circle of the class. Throughout his writing on play, Steiner is consistent on the point that every child plays differently. The unprejudiced observer will observe soon enough that imitation lies at the basis of play. But every child plays differently. When one educates the little child before the age of 7, one must discern very carefully. In order to assess the child's play properly, one needs an artistic sense because things are different with every child. The early childhood educator must school his or her observation in order to develop an artistic eye to detect the individual quality of a child's play. Story 1. A small girl stands outside in the yard of her preschool. This is not a private school on the hill with access to nature, but a Head Start program in a community beset by stress and strain. How does it feel to be a child growing up in a place outsiders label as crumbling? The play yard is tiny. The girl sees things that are familiar to her: a plastic playhouse, a concrete tricycle path that bisects a scrappy patch of grass. She pauses. Her widening eyes take in new things. Cardboard boxes big enough to stand in, bins of chalk, markers, and string. Bits of colored fabric and costumes hang from the fence, fluttering in the wind. Other classmates soon join the girl. They all have permission to play. They had been shown the bins, yet they hang back, unsure of what to do. A play facilitator picks up some chalk, squats near a long cardboard tunnel, and draws on the cardboard. The girl edges closer. The adult offers a piece of chalk to the child, who picks it up. She tries drawing for herself. Others join her, and a small group starts decorating the cardboard together. Without speaking, the adult picks up tape and popsicle sticks from another bin and tapes the sticks to the side of the small box. A different group of children come over. The little yard soon is alive with children fully engaged in imaginative and creative play, alone and in groups. In an end-of-day reflection session, the Head Start teachers report that the children played in entirely new ways. A few bins of material objects and adults integrated into the space, skillful and thoughtful about how and when to guide or intervene, ignited the transformation. A playground for the imagination. Who is the creator? Story 2. Have fun and try not to get hurt or hurt anyone else. Better a broken bone than a broken spirit. Lady Allen of Hertwood, a woman of royal descent and an urban geographer by training, was interested in how urban spaces are used. She observed how children played in the bombed-out rubble and debris of post-World War II neighborhoods. She saw with the eyes of a child, and what she saw and brought to words as an adult was beauty, joy, freedom, endless imagination, and connection. Her work led her to design outside environments, and this in turn led her to address the issues of children's rights and children's need for play. She became a major player in UNICEF. In London today, there is another woman who has dedicated her life to creating truly inclusive public play spaces. Her name is Penny Wilson. I do not know Penny Wilson. I may never meet her, but she has become another one of my superheroes because she has made me think deeply about risk, inclusion, and building community and connections through play in an urban setting. Indeed, for me, the literal physical environment of what are called adventure playgrounds in Europe raises additional questions about the implicit biases we bring to the aesthetics of space. How do our unexamined assumptions about what we view as beautiful or even appropriate play environments for children bring judgment instead of open curiosity? That's a topic for later consideration. Let's return to Penny. She had a single driving criteria for the specific location for her open public play space. I want a place where children with disabilities, however defined, can come and play with peers and others. Ponder that calling and aspiration for a moment. Superhero, indeed. Story 3. Harry was a boy who, like every young child on the face of the earth, wanted and needed to play. In the eyes of potential playmates, however, Harry was different, and this difference brought Harry discomfort. Unease, in turn, brought avoidance. In the adventure playground, Harry stood apart and alone from the other children, with his mother at his side. Harry blessedly had a helper, Penny. Penny is a professional play worker, as they are called in Europe. Her job is to guide children into play of their own choosing. She was there to help Harry. Penny observes, reflects, and connects with families in order to help guide children into play. She did what she saw was needed so that Harry could play with other children. This is what she does for all the children. Penny knows there's not one way to play. Let's pause for a moment to consider Penny's role and responsibility more fully. Just what is this well-compensated, academically credentialed profession dedicated to supporting play for children in ways and in spaces that would rub against the sensibilities of many Americans? The term play work is deliberately oxymoronic. It is a craft filled with paradoxes. Playworkers are aware that in an ideal world they should not need to exist. They manage the spaces for children's play, but this work needs to be as invisible and unobtrusive to the children as possible. The ideal playworker leaves the children free to play by themselves, but intervenes in carefully measured ways to support the play process. She's aware of her own playfulness, but does not impose it upon the children. She must necessarily be devoted to the children's play, but shun the role of Pied Piper. One of the most basic underpinnings of the craft of the playworker is to understand that the children's play within the boundaries of a play setting should remain unadulterated by external agendas. Good playworkers will have resources available for children, such as painting supplies, but they do not do activities. Another part of the oxymoronic nature of the play facilitation is the need to be present and not present at the same time. Penny introduced herself to Harry's people. She visited Harry's home. She learned that bright, shiny objects enamored Harry, and so one day, Penny invited Harry and his mother to come to the playground again. On this day, Penny floated around the space as the magical pocket lady with treasures tucked here and there in generous folds of her sturdy, practical coat. When Harry arrived with his mother, Penny reached into her pockets and gave Harry a handful of golden baubles. For the next several days, Harry and his new friends had a treasure hunt amidst the rubbly space of this urban playground. This happened as I see it because the adults, Penny along with Harry's mother, both were the bearers of light for the children. What arises internally for you from these two intimate stories of play? Plastic bins in the play yard? A single rule for outside play? Meeting the children's needs for entering into play on a one-by-one basis in consultation with parents and family? In her recommendations made on behalf of the Alliance for Childhood, Joan Allman encouraged the use of loose parts and play pods, which she saw in the Head Start program and in the European model of adventure playgrounds. Loose parts are low-cost, open-ended materials that children can play with in a multitude of ways. These are things that adults no longer need and that delight children. One finds such materials in dumpsters and recycling bins. Art of Recycle has a list of scrap stores in the United States. Thrift stores, Habitat for Humanity, and resale stores are also good sources. Many programs offer a rhythm or rotation of the materials in the bins. Small storage units called play pods are often used to house the materials, especially for schools or playgrounds serving many children. Open, community-based pop-up play days have been effective in building a wider community by bringing more play to more children. Loose parts are, it seems to me, an extension of the open-ended toys and play materials in our classrooms. They also offer an expansion of uses for play materials, often relegated to inside play. Adult fear is a major obstacle in meeting the needs of children for adventurous, child-directed play with open-ended materials. Professional play workers, like those in our two stories, provide a reassuring presence to parents, but they hold back from intervening in the children's play, which is a boon for the children. They step in only if it seems clear that a child is likely to hurt himself or another child. Penny sees herself as wearing a cape of invisibility. Children have freedom, power, and agency. When needed, however, the cape comes off and the play worker intervenes. To play is to risk. To risk is to play. Children extend their abilities through risky play and learn to master challenging environments. They generally know how far they can go without actually hurting themselves. It is time to rethink risk and to see its benefits as well as its difficulties. Facing risk helps children assess the world around them and their place in it. Children love to see how high they can climb on a tree or a jungle gym. Over time, they see their abilities grow. They become ever more confident about stretching their boundaries and taking appropriate chances. They also learn about their limits and the consequences of going too far beyond their limits. As they grow older, they apply these lessons in a variety of real-life situations. Risk is not the same as hazard. In the United States, we tend to confuse risks and hazards and try to protect children from both. It's important to differentiate between risks that are visible and which children can assess for themselves and hidden hazards. Hazards are objects that children cannot see or be expected to avoid, like broken glass on an usually well-tended playground. Risks are those experiences and objects that are in the open and obvious. Many play injuries are related to broken or poorly designed equipment. If you are a child with Tourette's syndrome, you may not be able to abide by the no swearing rule. However, much you might wish to. Because Penny's play environment was so inclusive, she had to think hard about a system of shared understanding. The result was her single rule that allowed for dealing with many different ways of perceiving the world and for dealing with accidental or unwitting hurt, emotional upset, and damage to things that really mattered. The rule was fluid and flexible. There was no line drawn in the sand, so children did not spend any time testing boundaries as they often do with rigid rules. She did not believe that a binary approach worked. To avoid this binary opposition requires the play facilitator to be subtle. An example of this returns us to the story Joan Allman relates in the epigraph. Two boys stood on a table, and each declared himself king. By the quiet suggestion that two kings could coexist, the boys redirected their budding conflict into play. Let puppies play. Unpacking rough and tumble. A rambunctious pack of puppies roll around on the rug. The pleasantly pink rug that is, in the eyes of a teacher, the circle rug. The puppies see it differently. Not that they are seeing or hearing anything at this point. Friends, bodies touching. Teacher's voice slowly and steadily increases in volume. Teacher finds herself repeating herself as she says again to the puppies, "We do not play that way inside." In a weary follow-up statement, again falling on deaf ears, teacher tells the children that they need to wait until we are outside. Expecting children to wait to move their bodies, preventing children from expressing their inner drive to touch, pounce, wriggle, and roll like puppies, restricting physical play to a single space at a predetermined time in a daily rhythm, typically outdoors. Why? Do tight parameters around rough and tumble play recognize children's needs and who the children are? A commitment to supporting child-directed play is an act of deep respect for the children, their play experiences, and their development. At the same time, it is physical play that is most likely to provoke emotional responses, ranging anywhere from discomfort and unease to fear and chaos and seeming anarchy from caregivers. Take a step back from the tussling puppies in the kindergarten to recall the very first physical play experiences of a young child. Physical play begins with a child exploring their bodies, playing with hands and feet, and establishing relationships to another through touch, care, and love. This play is crucial for building self-confidence and loving relationships with other human beings. It is part of the development of movement, physical skills, and the mastery of the limbs. It promotes the feeling of well-being, of being at home in the body. Physical play builds and refines the social brain. It is the most fundamental form of play and the truest expression of what it means to be a child. The social play of all young mammals is what we call rough and tumble play, or big body play. This kind of play is an essential part of healthy development. Rough and tumble play in the early years provides a wealth of healthy sensory experiences. As Chapter 4 on the senses describes in detail, the importance of healthy foundational senses cannot be overemphasized. Comfort in one's body and peacefulness in mind and heart are prerequisites for a healthy social and emotional life. Children come to this comfort through movement, like rough and tumble play, which metamorphosizes into healthy social senses. The more we open up the conditions of possibility for more children to participate in rough and tumble, the more likely our environment is to help children develop trust, tolerance, compassion, and a sense of justice and equanimity in social encounters. Physical play, now prescribed by pediatricians, also develops overall physical fitness, reducing rates of obesity and improving bone and cardiovascular health. Children strengthen their sensory awareness through this kind of play and learn how to regulate their strength. They practice self-control. Big body play invites flexible, creative, and social behavior. Animal pups deprived of physical interaction show withdrawn, antisocial, and aggressive behavior. Based upon his research on the absence of childhood play and antisocial behavior in adulthood, the American psychologist Stuart Brown believes this kind of spontaneous play is a powerful and positive force for the good. The National Institute of Health recently referenced the growing body of evidence highlighting the benefits of rough and tumble play. Quantitative findings show that in order to successfully engage in rough and tumble play, children must practice perceptual, motor, and social skills. More relevant to the discussion here is the point that this kind of play is also often misunderstood or misperceived. More significantly, researchers note that physical play remains one of the most challenging activities to support in early childhood education and care institutions. What? Why? People may think of physical play in the classroom as complete chaos, with children knocking each other over, but this is not the case. Much of the play labeled rough and tumble is neither rough, nor does it involve tumbling. Current research sees a bias inherent in the term. Full body play and big body play are increasingly being used instead. In a study from kindergartners and preschools in Norway, researchers observed that this kind of play includes most play using the full body, including body contact with another individual, body contact with objects, striking objects with feet, hands, or an object such as a stick. Play spanned a wide range of social interactions, chasing games, big body play with and without physical contact between players, and play fighting. This study explored what would happen when children in early care settings had free access to spaces that afforded physically active play, such as rough and tumble. The findings from the study are many and merit attention. For one thing, this research supported previous research that shows boys are more likely than girls to engage in full body play across cultures. The study also shows that in a Norwegian context, caregivers restrict physical play much less outside than inside. However, this is a big however, children perceive indoor spaces for physical play to be more attractive than outdoor environments. Furthermore, in a physically and culturally supportive environment for physical play, girls participated more fully. The study also observes that boys and girls use the physical environment in different ways. Boys participated more than girls in all categories of rough and tumble, especially play fighting. Girls seemed to be attracted to less physically demanding, uncompetitive categories of rough and tumble, such as big body play with and without physical contact with others. Most of the play occurred in gender-separated play groups, although the children often played simultaneously within the same space. Since the literature shows that participation in full body play is closely connected to children's social skill development, this study advises that early care settings provide safe but challenging environments for both boys and girls. Strategies for supporting rough and tumble play indoors included a designated play space in a large, soft floor area with pillows or cushions, small group size, and adult supervision as helpful measures. In addition, these areas should be uninterrupted by non-participating peers and free from leaning activities. How buildings are designed and how rooms are organized with furniture and play materials affect children's possibilities to make independent choices for free action. This study encourages educators to develop the pedagogical skills to facilitate challenging and safe environments for appropriate indoor physical play. Let all the puppies play. The confluence of storytelling and story acting, connection, community, and belonging. When you tell someone your story, that person enters your story and becomes your friend. Human morality depends on the interest one man takes in another, upon the capability to see into the other man. Those who have the gift of understanding other human beings will receive from this understanding the impulses for a social life imbued with true morality. What do I play? Who are my friends? Do I have friends? Am I feeling really alone? Am I alone? In recent years, we have re-examined what is truly essential for Waldorf early childhood education. The oral tradition of the language arts, storytelling, rhyming, poetry, and song certainly rises to center stage, sparking a love for the delicious tones and cadence of language, nourishing inner soul forces, planting seeds for the imagination, easing the stress of a transition, holding mirrors and opening windows. The human voice telling a tale, in whatever form, is a rich, living presence in our classrooms. The children are blessed to receive this gift. How might we extend this gift into the realm of play? How might we use storytelling, something that we already are doing, to help build children's imaginative muscle for play in general? How can we use dramatic play to build empathic imitation in order to bring the distinctive persona of individual child into the group, in friendship, in creative kindness, in trust and acceptance? Is this not the ultimate purpose of play? I share with you another one of my superheroes, Vivian Paley. I want more people to know about her because I think her body of research informed work allows us to see our work in a new light. Paley illuminates for us how children come to build social and empathic imitation, emotional and social literacy, connection and community through a confluence of storytelling and story acting. She also offers concrete and practical steps for expanding upon a practice already in place in our classrooms, our rich craft of oral storytelling. Storytelling is still the only activity I know of, besides play itself, that is immediately understood and desired by every child over the age of 2. Vivian Paley is described as being as much an artist as a teacher, creative and playful to the end of her life. She was a preschool and kindergarten teacher for over 30 years, a researcher and author of many books that capture her strengths as a keen observer and listener of young children. At the age of 60, while teaching at the University of Chicago Laboratory School, she received a MacArthur Genius Award for her particular teaching approach to storytelling and dramatic play with children. The approach is deceptively simple. Children are invited to share a story with their teacher. The story may only be a few words or even a single word. The teacher acts as a scribe and writes down the story. The class then acts out these stories. Children share and act out of freedom. A clear rhythm and process brings form. As an anthropologist of her own classroom community, Paley discovered that this teacher-facilitated co-creative art allowed children to join a complex and diverse social world with their individual identities intact. As she describes throughout her writings, this approach brought belonging for all. The children are happiest, she found, when every individual in the group establishes an identity. In her words, one role is as good as another, so long as you can be inside the story and become necessary for the group. Dramatic play is the perfect stage for the theater of feelings to find expression. When children give each other roles to play, they are able to learn through, with, and in relationship to the other and their experiences. Playing out the dramas resting on their own hearts can be a journey of understanding for children, about their own feelings and about those of others. In the acting out of stories from peers, children recreate themselves in the mood of the other person, reproducing every gesture, facial expression, tone of voice, affecting a magical transmission of emotion. Empathic imitation in play helps counteract alienation and enhances social awareness. Living imaginatively in the experiences of the other awakens the ability to read the thoughts and feelings of others. As the ancient sages said, the need to know how someone else feels is the rock upon which the moral universe depends. The Steiner-informed book by Sally Jenkinson, Genius of Play, uses the voice of every child to convey what is meant by empathic imitation. Sometimes I am afraid. Sometimes I don't know what to do. Sometimes I am angry. I don't know what the script is, but let me be you. I want to know how you feel, think, and act. I want to know what responsibility feels like, although I cannot sustain it. I want to look through the looking glass into your world in the way I can, through my play. Please help me. At a time when we see children who cannot imitate, even when surrounded by teachers bringing living examples of meaningful, practical work, it becomes imperative for adults to do more in order to activate other avenues for imitative expression. Sarah Smilansky, an Israeli researcher who has studied play in Israel and the United States since the 1960s, found that sociodramatic play was an accurate indicator of social competence. Smilansky identifies 8 compelling reasons to support sociodramatic play. I must have the appropriate behavior for my role. I need to grasp the essence of a play situation. Playing to a given theme teaches concentration. Participation in socio-dramatic play requires children to discipline their actions to fit in with the narrative and the roles they have assumed. Others may change the storyline. This asks me to be flexible. Role playing offers different perspectives on, for example, how father acts. The child moves toward abstract thought and symbolism. Children skilled in dramatic play understand different interpretations and roles and different definitions of various situations and themes, both in school and in a wider context. Supporting children's storytelling in this way and to these ends requires listening, scaffolding, and a willingness to experiment with new forms and practices. Teachers listening to children, children listening to their classmates, and children listening to adults, all in the service of better understanding each other and enjoying each other's stories. Listening extends beyond the immediate circle of the classroom. The Boston Public Schools adopted Paley's approach as a formal foundation of its early childhood curriculum. Their experiences with its implementation may help guide our thinking. For example, we know we want and need to expand and strengthen our community relationships. The Boston schools explored how to use storytelling to engage families in ways that benefited family, school, and the children. All flourishing is mutual. Expanding inclusion into the realm of storytellers brings more than diversity of story as a window into cultural differences. Children hear different narrative styles as well. Tone, pacing, cadence, and gesture also come into the storytelling space as well. Volunteers, older students, or administrators might be recruited to act as the story scribes, sharing children's stories at conferences with parents, families, delights everyone. Boston Teachers Found and provides the opportunity to talk about storytelling and how families can support children's learning through stories. For children reluctant to tell stories at school, teachers found that stories sent from home via email or written on paper are a nurturing support. As we see the need to meet the children on an individual basis, sitting with a child to listen and scribe a story engages children one-on-one with an intentional and joyful activity. For children learning English with developing verbal skills or with special needs, this approach allows teachers and peers to help co-construct stories. Eli, for example, was a child new to the country. English was foreign to him as well. After several months of listening to classmates tell stories and quietly watching other classroom activities, Eli came to the table to tell his story. It was a one-word story. Eli. Choosing to be the actor for his story, Eli took the stage. As the teacher read his name, he jumped into the air. It seemed this was Eli's way of announcing that he had arrived. Subsequently, he became an enthusiastic participant in classroom activities. Other educators note that this teacher-facilitated practice allowed children on the autism spectrum to enter into play that transferred into blocks and then into other types of play. Teachers have found it helpful in practicing self-regulation skills like waiting, taking turns, and deferring. Others note an increase in creative ideas and imaginative thinking. How does one tell a meaningful one-word story? How does one act out a flower? Children live in a violent world. Children are also exposed to violent images through the media. Grappling with issues of power and control, many children are drawn to stories involving superheroes and fighting. These have long been features of children's play and stories. Whether or not to censor stories with violent themes is a controversial issue. Teachers have to make decisions about how to respond to children's stories that contain violence. Many teachers are uncomfortable with allowing stories with fighting and violence, even while understanding that stories are a way children make sense of the world. Paley argued that in helping children safely dramatize these stories, teachers help children learn that they control the story. not the other way around. Our playfulness as wisdom and practice. Cultivating a ludic mood in life. The opposite of play is not work. It is depression. The Essentials of Waldorf Early Childhood Education by Susan Howard notes humor, joy, and wonder as qualities that we want to be present and living not just in our classrooms, but also in ourselves. Humor shares a root with humility and humanity and humus. That common root is earth. I find this connection curious and a compelling gateway to thinking about how adult qualities of humor and humility relate to a playful mood for the classroom and set a model of imitation needed by many children. I am drawn to this word, ludic, which simply means playful. Holding a ludic mood of self may, I suggest, bring us closer in attunement to children hungry for play, and closer to families and colleagues in a spirit of joy and connection. The world needs that. Ponder for a moment a person of wisdom and humility. How does their humility express itself? Everyone needs superheroes of lightness. Fred Rogers, the creator of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, lives for me as such a person. In spirit and soul, he embodied a fusion of great gravitas and playfulness for untold millions of children for over 30 years. He choreographed the production of each show in a meticulous and exacting manner, every word scripted, every song self-composed, and flowing forth in the moment that seeming spontaneity and certain joy, curiosity, and playfulness. Mr. Rogers was as gentle and loving in real life as on screen, but he also had an iron will and perfectionistic standards. He believed in and worked every day to emulate a divine being who welcomes children, loves us just the way we are, and calls us to love ourselves and our neighbors. The film archives in his productions capture the subtle, layered nuances of these qualities, just as they also reveal a person always gentle and sometimes awkward. His lightheartedness is not pie-in-the-face comedy. Extrovert he was not. The content and style of his teaching on social and emotional skills contain things relevant to adults today. As I consider what a world with artificial intelligence will mean for today's children, I also turn to Fred Rogers as an icon of hope in his revolutionary transformation of the medium of television as a force for good. How does it affect you when you witness lightheartedness between two people? How does it move you emotionally to recall, for instance, Michelle and Barack Obama making merry on stage together? Shared smiles and gentle banter floated through a space otherwise confined to and defined by politics and power. What? A playful president and first lady stepping out with humility on behalf of humanity? Is that not an antidote for the political polarization we now bear witness to? Or consider the relationship between the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The intimacy of that relationship never fails to lighten and inspire me. See the reciprocity of intimate touch as one cradles the face of the other, crinkled smiles on both. Listen to how each speaks in turn, with profundity and sanctity interrupted by literal giggles. Humor brings them together. Levity becomes sustenance. Despite separate biographies of long suffering, humility forms the ground for a forward-looking hope. It is much better when there's not too much seriousness, said the Dalai Lama. Rudolf Steiner discovered some truth in that for himself. When in his 20s, he learned to play. In order to meet the needs of an individual student's development, he gave himself that assignment. He did this with great satisfaction, and he said himself, really, if we preserve all through life a mood of being able to learn from life, not simply accumulating knowledge, but growing inwardly better and richer than we have gathered wisdom. Plato wrote that you discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. Let's move from a relationship between two to a larger scale. How might a ludic mind in teaching and relations help create and cultivate community and bolster its well being? It seems to me that bringing more playfulness into faculty meetings, for example, or sharing observations of play in daily check ins, brings form and reframing to our striving for positivity and circles us back to the heart of our work, the children. The whole notion of a ludic mood in teaching and life is predicated on the idea of social relations. Play and playfulness are social by nature. It is this social nature that positively impacts well being. Providing opportunities for teachers to interact in a playful manner enhances interpersonal connections and all the benefits associated with them. Bringing observations and stories of play from the classroom is one place to start. Research on playfulness in adults shows positive psychological benefits, joy, and happiness, along with qualities like flexibility and creativity that are essential for the times. There's no one way for a person to be playful, just as we recognize that what is play for one is not play for another. We can hold ourselves with tenderness, openness, and creativity to discover a ludic mood in our work and life. In the kinship structure of the superheroes whose stories I have brought to you here, we see that there are multiple ways to be a person. This bids our own individual light to shine, just as it then shines forth in radiance to each individual child, which in turn radiates back to the parents and family, light and heart. Thank you.